The living room buzzed with small talk. The kind of chatter that fills family gatherings, half gossip, half updates. I wasn't really part of the flow, just sipping my drink and waiting for dessert. That's when I mentioned, casually, that my PS5 had been collecting dust lately. I barely use it anymore, I said. Been busy. Thought maybe the kids would like it. The moment hung in the air like a good deed waiting to bloom. My brother's eyes widened. A flicker of gratitude showing even before the words formed. But before he could speak, his wife leaned forward with that sharp, performative laugh she always carried. "Oh yeah, you should definitely give it to us," she said. Loud enough for the room to pause. "You're single and don't have any real responsibilities anyway." Her words cut like glass hidden in honey. The room chuckled awkwardly, some nodding. Others pretending not to hear the sting in her voice. My brother's lips pressed together, his gratitude tangled in embarrassment. I forced a smile, though my chest tightened. It wasn't the offer that hurt, it was the dismissal. In her eyes, I was lesser. My choices void because I didn't have a spouse or children to anchor my worth. I let it slide, or at least that's what it looked like. Later, as I grabbed my coat to leave, my brother pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," he whispered, guilt shadowing his face. "She shouldn't have said that." I patted his shoulder. "Don't worry about it. The kids will love the PS5. But inside, the thought already burned, you laughed at me. Reduced me, in front of everyone. You think being single means being insignificant. If she thought I had no responsibilities, then maybe it was time I created one for her, one she wouldn't forget. That night, as I stared at the console glowing faintly under the TV, I realized something. This wasn't just a gift anymore. It was going to be my weapon. That night, I couldn't sleep. The laughter of my sister-in-law replayed in my head like a broken record. "You're single and don't have any real responsibilities anyway." It wasn't just a comment, it was a verdict. In her voice, I wasn't a person making a kind gesture. I was a disposable extra in the story of her family. I stared at the ceiling, asking myself why it cut so deep. After all, hadn't I heard it before? The casual digs, the jokes about settling down. The subtle comparisons to people who had children, mortgages, and a real life. But this time, it was different. This time, it happened when I was offering something from the heart. Instead of gratitude, I got humiliation. I remembered the look on my brother's face, grateful but trapped. As if he wanted to defend me but couldn't. He was always like that with her. Soft-spoken, stepping around her sharp edges. And the kids. Innocent, wide-eyed, sitting silently while the adults joked. They didn't notice the insult, but one day, they would. They would learn from her laughter that people without kids, without families, were somehow less. I clenched my fists under the covers. No. Not this time. They thought I was just handing over a console. Just another handout from the single uncle with nothing better to do. But I knew better. The PS5 wasn't just a box of wires and plastic. It was power. Inside it were accounts, subscriptions, data, and access only I controlled. Slowly, a thought began to form. If she wanted to laugh at me, to dismiss me, maybe it was time to show her what irresponsibility really looked like. Not with shouting, not with insults, but with something much quieter. And far more satisfying. I smiled in the darkness, the first genuine smile since that night. The console would still go to them. But this time, it wouldn't just be a gift. It would be the beginning of something bigger. Revenge doesn't always arrive with fire and fury. Sometimes, it arrives in a sleek black box with a controller attached. Revenge, if done right, doesn't need shouting. It needs patience. Strategy. A smile that hides the storm. Over the next few days, I sat in front of my PS5, not to play, but to prepare. Every setting, every account, every tiny detail became a tool. First, I created a master account with my name. All the parental controls, purchases, and online features would link back to me. Then I set up a few child accounts, ready for my nephews. They'd play, they'd enjoy, and they'd never know the difference. But here's the trick, only I had the admin access. Every game they downloaded, every online match they played, every credit card added, ran through me. I could pause, restrict, or shut it all down with one tap on my phone. It wasn't just about control. It was about timing. I didn't want the kids to suffer, they were innocent. My target was her. The sister-in-law who looked at me like a failure. So I planned carefully. Step 1, gift the console with a smile. Let the kids scream with joy. Let my brother beam with gratitude. Let her act like she had scored some victory. Step 2, wait for her to brag. Because I knew she would. She loved attention, loved the spotlight. She'd tell everyone how she got the PS5. How her family was lucky, how the single uncle had no use for it. Step 3, the shutdown. Not permanent, just enough to embarrass her. Imagine the kids in the middle of a game, everything freezing. Her friends watching as the console displays. Access restricted by admin. Her face. Red, scrambling to explain. That's the moment I wanted. But I didn't stop there. I also installed a quiet little recording app linked to the consoles. Media storage. Harmless, but it saved voice clips whenever someone used the mic. The PS5 wasn't just going to be entertainment. It was going to be my listening post. And when the right moment came, I'd have proof of how she really spoke about me behind closed doors. The beauty of it all? She would never see it coming. To her, I was just that single, responsibility-free sibling. A man with too much time on his hands. But soon, she'd realize something important. Even the quiet ones know how to strike back. The plan was set. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to deliver the gift. And when I did, the game would truly begin. The next weekend, I carried the sleek black box into my brother's living room. The kids spotted it instantly. "Is that?" The eldest gasped, eyes wide. "PS5. The younger one screamed, practically bouncing on the couch. Their laughter filled the house, pure and innocent. That was the part one wanted, the joy. They deserved it. My brother shook his head in disbelief. "Man. You didn't have to do this." His voice cracked. Like the weight of his struggles made the gesture heavier than I meant it to be. I shrugged casually. It was just gathering dust at my place. Better here than wasted. And then, right on cue, her voice cut through the happiness. My sister-in-law leaned back in her chair. Arms crossed, that same smug smile tugging at her lips. "Well, of course he'd give it away," she said. Loud enough for the kids not to notice the sting but sharp enough for me to catch. He doesn't really need things like this. No kids, no family, what else is he going to do with it? I felt my jaw tighten, but I forced a polite smile. The trap wasn't sprung yet. Not today. The kids were already ripping through the box, shrieking as they held up the controllers like treasures. My brother crouched beside them, helping them connect wires, his face glowing with a mix of pride and guilt. Meanwhile, she stood like a queen who had just won another battle. "I'll make sure it's taken care of," she said, patting the console like it was hers. "You know how careless kids can be." I chuckled under my breath. "Oh, you'll take care of it, all right." What she didn't realize was that the PS5 wasn't just a gift, it was mine. Always. Every beep, every login, every mic recording was tied to my account. She thought she was in control, but really, she had just walked straight into my playground. That night, after the console was set up and the kids were shouting through their first game, I got the notification on my phone, new device registered, user, nephew 1. I smiled. Everything was connected. Everything was working. She believed she had won. That my gesture proved her right, that I was the single, responsibility-free uncle, giving handouts because I had nothing else. But what she didn't know was this. The real game hadn't even started yet. And when it did, she would be the one losing pieces. One move at a time. A few weeks passed. The kids were in heaven every time I visited. They were talking about new games, showing me their high scores, begging me to play just one match. That joy was real. And I wasn't about to ruin it. But behind their laughter, another pattern was forming. At a family dinner, my aunt asked, "So how did you guys manage to get a PS5 in this economy? They're still impossible to find." Before my brother could even open his mouth, she leaned in, all teeth and shine. "Oh, you know me," she said with a self-satisfied laugh. "I always make sure my kids get the best. We just manage." Not a word about me. Not a hint that it was a gift. I watched my brother's jaw tighten, but he stayed silent. The kids were too busy describing their favorite game to notice. I said nothing, just sipped my drink. But inside, my patience was thinning. Days later, I heard her voice through my phone notification. The PS5's mic had picked up a recording while she was on the headset. Her words stung sharper than any blade. "Honestly, he should be giving us things. He has no wife, no kids, no real bills. What else is he good for? Might as well make himself useful." I sat there, listening, my blood running cold. She wasn't just dismissive in public. She was dismissive behind closed doors, too. She saw me as nothing more than a bank, a charity, a shadow to use and laugh at. That night, as my nephews were mid-match, I tapped my phone. 1. Single. Tap. The console froze. The screen flickered. A red notification appeared across their TV. Access restricted by admin. I pictured her confusion from across town. The kids yelling, "Mom! Mom, what happened?" My brother fiddling with wires, trying to fix it. And her, standing there, scrambling for answers she didn't have. For 5 long minutes, I left it that way. Then, just as suddenly, the console lit back up. The kids cheered, thinking it was just a glitch. But I knew better. It was a warning shot. A reminder. And from the look on my brother's face the next time I saw him, I knew he suspected something. He didn't ask. He didn't have to. Because deep down, he knew me well enough to realize. This wasn't a glitch. This was just the beginning. The annual family barbecue was always a big deal, everyone showed up. Cousins, aunts, uncles, even neighbors sometimes dropped by. I arrived a little later than usual, carrying nothing but a smile and a quiet plan. The kids spotted me first, running up with excitement. "Uncle! Uncle! Guess what? We unlocked new levels on the PS5." Their joy was contagious. I ruffled their hair, laughing with them. And then, as expected, she swept in, plate in hand, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, the PS5 has been the best thing for our home. I made sure my kids got it, even when times were tough. You just have to know how to prioritize, you know." I froze, pretending to listen, but inside I was smiling. Here it comes. My aunt clapped her hands. That's amazing. Honestly, you're lucky you managed to find one. I heard even people with money couldn't get their hands on it. Sil tilted her chin smugly. Well, what can I say? I take care of my family. That was my cue. I pulled my phone from my pocket and, as casually as checking a text, tapped a button. Within seconds, her phone, lying on the picnic table, buzzed loudly. A notification appeared on the screen, visible to anyone near it. Admin access, console gifted by, my name. Activity log, restricted session triggered by SIL comments, he has no wife. No kids. What else is he good for? The table went silent. Eyes darted between me, her, and the screen. My brother's face turned pale. The kids looked confused. And she, her mouth fell open, words choking in her throat. What is this? She stammered, grabbing her phone like it was suddenly a bomb. I smiled softly, keeping my tone calm. Oh. That's just a notification from the PS5's admin account. I get updates, recordings, even logs. It helps me keep track of, everything. The implication hung in the air. Everyone understood. My brother clenched his jaw, looking away in embarrassment. My aunt raised her eyebrows, whispering to the person beside her. The silence around her was louder than any insult could have been. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Finally, I leaned forward and said gently, I gave the console for the kids. Not for status. Not for lies. Just remember that. Her face burned red, caught between rage and humiliation. But she had no comeback, not with her own words laid bare in front of the family. The kids tugged at my arm. Uncle, can we play with you later? I smiled down at them. Of course. Always. And that was the sweetest part. Her arrogance was crushed. Her mask was gone. But the kids? Their joy stayed untouched. For me, that was victory enough. The barbecue ended earlier than usual. Conversations carried on, but there was a tension in the air that refused to fade. People gave me nods of quiet respect, while throwing curious glances at my sister-in-law. She had gone silent, her usual sharp tongue tied down by her own words. As I got up to leave, my brother followed me out to the driveway. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just stared at the ground. Hands shoved into his pockets. Finally, he spoke, voice low. I'm sorry. I turned to look at him. For what? He sighed, the weight of it heavy. For not stopping her sooner. For letting her talk like that about you. You've always been there for me. And his words broke off, his frustration visible. I placed a hand on his shoulder. It's not about her. It's about you and the kids. That's why I gave it. Don't carry her mistakes on your back. He nodded, eyes glassy. Still, thank you. For everything. When I drove off, my phone buzzed again, another PS5 log. But this time, it wasn't her voice. It was my nephew's. Mom, Uncle's the best. We wouldn't even have this without him. Her muffled response followed after a long pause, I know. That single moment was sweeter than any public humiliation could ever be. Over the following weeks, things changed. She wasn't overly friendly with me, but she wasn't cruel anymore, either. Her remarks, once sharp and dismissive, were replaced with quiet nods and forced politeness. The fire in her arrogance had dimmed. And my bond with the kids grew stronger than ever. They called me almost every weekend. Excited to show me new progress. Inviting me to join their games. To them, I wasn't the single uncle with no responsibilities. I was their hero. As for me, I didn't need applause. I didn't need recognition. I already had what mattered: respect, truth, and a quiet victory that didn't just silence her. It rewrote my place in the family. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all. Looking back, I realized the PS5 was never just a console. It was a mirror. A mirror that revealed people for who they really were. For my nephews, it reflected innocence, joy, and wonder. For my brother, it showed gratitude and love. And for her, it showed arrogance, entitlement, and the truth she tried to hide. Revenge didn't come from shouting, fighting, or breaking ties. It came from patience. From letting her own words destroy her. From protecting the kids' happiness while making sure she could never dismiss me again. In the end, she lost more than I ever could have taken from her. And I gained something far more valuable than any console, or even an apology. A reminder that silence, timing, and truth are the sharpest weapons of all. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's lasting. And it leaves them remembering, long after the game is over.